Okay, this video focuses a little bit on what the 25th Amendment isn't and what it is. So let's start with what it isn't first. A lot of people think that it establishes the order of presidential succession, which is a fancy way of saying like who takes over for who if the people in front of them like are unable to serve as president. There's like an order. That was actually established in 1947 by the Presidential Succession Act. So I think you know that if the president dies, the vice president like takes over. But there's an order beyond the vice president of like if something happens to the president and the vice president, who takes over after that. So the first person is the Speaker of the House and then the temporary president of the Senate. So they are the first three in order of presidential succession: the VP, the Speaker of the House, and the President pro tem of the Senate, because they actually receive votes from citizens. Not every citizen, but some people vote for them. And then after that, it's the order of the cabinet positions in the order of their creation, not the order of their importance. So the first four cabinet positions under President Washington were State, Treasury, Defense, and then the Attorney General, who leads the Department of Justice. Those are the first, and then it goes all the way down to the Homeland Security Director, who serves as the head of a department that basically was founded after 9/11 as a response to that. So that's not what the 25th Amendment is. This is an order created by the 1947 Presidential Succession Act. The 25th Amendment is ratified 20 years later in 1967, and it does a couple of things. The first thing that it does is just kind of like reaffirm what I just showed you, that if the president dies or resigns, is unable to do their job, the VP takes over. They're not like a lesser version of the president. They have all the powers of the president. The second thing that the 25th Amendment clarifies is what happens if there's a vacancy for the vice presidency. So, what happens if the vice president dies, or what happens if the vice president resigns or is impeached or something like that? This lays out the process for how we would select a new vice president. So, basically, the president can just appoint a new one, select a new one, and then he would need majority approval from both houses of Congress. So the second part of the 25th Amendment just deals with how we replace vacancies in the vice presidency. There's not like a long order of succession. It's not like everybody like bumps up on that list that I previously showed you. The third thing that it does is it specifies that the vice president can like temporarily take over as acting president and then return back to being the vice president. So this might come up most frequently when a president has some sort of like medical procedure and maybe is going to be under anesthesia. The vice president can like tap in and become the president with all of the powers of the actual presidency. And then when the actual president is feeling better and is okay to make decisions again, they can tag back out and the vice president goes back to being the vice president and the normal president ends up being the president again. Right? This periodically happens as presidents have to undergo medical procedures and things like that. Probably the most interesting thing is that the 25th Amendment also supplies a mechanism by which you can get rid of the president if they, in your estimation, are unable to kind of fulfill the duties of the job. So, if a president breaks the law, right, Congress can impeach the president. But what if it's not a matter of like breaking the law? What if there's like an illness or something going on with the president that prevents them from actually making sound decisions? So there is a process by which the vice president and a majority of the cabinet can basically remove the president through like a vote. So if you get the vice president and a majority of the cabinet secretaries to vote, they can remove the president. This is highly unlikely because remember, the vice president and all the cabinet secretaries were basically chosen by the president. So this would kind of be betraying the person that gave them their jobs in the first place. But let's say that it actually happens. Then it's up to the president at that point to be like, you know what, you're right, I'm no longer able to be president, or he can challenge it. If the president challenges this vote from the VP and the majority of the cabinet, basically Congress would then have to decide. A two-thirds vote would have to decide by Congress whether or not Congress agrees with the president and he should remain because he's okay to keep doing the job, or do they side with the vice president and majority of the cabinet members that are alleging the president is unable to do their job? This has never been used before in American history, and obviously would be highly controversial if it did. So this is a little bit about the 25th Amendment, establishes four things, and remember, it does not establish the order of presidential succession.